gonna take us several minutes to update though.
Who do we have on the computer? Joel. Is Joel there?
There's Joel. Secretary probably was speaking.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
Here.
Mr. John Welch
Present.
and Miss Diane Nguyen. I believe she's absent right now. So, you have a quorum, Mayor.
Quite the delay.
We're gonna delay that. So, Is that window need to be closed? Sorry for the technical difficulties. We have a couple council members have been out sick, and myself, I've been getting a little bit of cold as well, so we'll get through it. This evening, we have Father David Lees, the administrator of Church of Resurrection on Woodlawn, to lead us in prayer. Father,
Good evening, and thank you for the invitation to be with you. I've been a Bel Aire resident for 5.5 years. I live in an apartment at the Priest Retirement Center, and I work full-time downtown Wichita at our Chancery office. I'm in administration mainly, so I spend my time in lots of meetings, behind doors, usually in small groups, doing work that people don't always are aware of. So thank you for your time and commitment to this, for serving our community. It's been a pleasure the last 8 weeks now to also be serving as a temporary pastor at Church of the Resurrection and getting to know the faithful of that parish here in this community. So glad for the invitation to lead us off with prayer this evening. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. Good and gracious God, we ask that you send your Holy Spirit upon the members of this city council this evening. Send your Spirit into the hearts and minds of those who are viewing, to our citizens and to our community members. We ask your blessings upon us at the start of this new year. Lord, we would ask that if the challenges that we may face cannot be alleviated, that you would give us courage and strength to be able to respond to them. We ask, Lord, for wisdom in the deliberations of the agenda this evening, that it may continue to further the blessings of this community, that it may be a source of unity and not division, that it may bring about understanding and not argument, and that it may help us all to come together to recognize the abundant gifts that you've bestowed upon us, and how we might not only enjoy those gifts, but also to share those gifts with those in need, to better make a human family among all of us. So guide the thoughts and words that will be shared this evening in this committee. Help us to continue to reach out to you, and fill us with that love and that charity to rise above any short-sightedness, anything that would be only self-serving. But may we come together and recognize the needs of the whole. So, Father, with your Spirit and in the love of your Son, we pray your blessing upon this meeting, and that you would continue to guide us in all ways. As in all things, we ask this in the name of your Son, Jesus, who lives and reigns forever and ever. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Please join me in the pledge of allegiance. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Number 5 on the agenda, the proclamation of Martin Luther King Jr. Day, is January 17th, and I've asked Council President Justice Smith to please read the proclamation.
To the citizens of Bel Aire, Kansas, greetings. Whereas Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. devoted his life to advancing equality, social justice, and opportunity for all, and challenged all Americans to participate in the never-ending work of building a more perfect union. And whereas Dr. King's teachings can continue to guide and inspire us in addressing challenges in our communities, and whereas the King Holiday and Service Act, enacted in 1994, designated the King Holiday as a national day of volunteer service and charged the Corporation of National and Community Service with leading this effort. And whereas since 1994, millions of Americans have been inspired by the life and work of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to serve their neighbors and communities on the King Holiday. And whereas serving on the King Holiday is an appropriate way to honor Dr. King, meet local and national needs, bring our citizens together, and strengthen our communities and nation. And whereas the King Day of Service is the only federal holiday commemorated as a national day of service and offers an opportunity for Americans to give back to their communities on the holiday and make an ongoing commitment to service throughout the year. And whereas King Day of Service projects are being organized by a wide range of nonprofit and community organizations, educational institutions, public agencies, private businesses, and other organizations across the nation. And whereas each of us can and must contribute to making our communities better with increased opportunity for all our citizens, and whereas citizens of Bel Aire, Kansas have the opportunity to participate in events throughout our city on the King Day of Service, January 17th, 2022, as well as create and implement community service projects where they identify the need. Now, therefore, I, Jim Benage, Mayor of Bel Aire, proclaim January 17th, 2022 as Martin Luther King Jr. Day and a day of service in Bel Aire, and call upon the people of our city to pay tribute to the life and work of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. through participation in community service projects on Martin Luther King Day and throughout the year.
Item 6 on the agenda is determine agenda additions. Are there any agenda additions? We'll move on to item 7, consent agenda. It only contains the minutes of December 7th regular meeting and the December 14th special meeting.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Smith and second by Mr. Welch. Any discussion? Can you gentlemen at home hear us all right? Dr. Shorter and Mr. David? Oh, okay. So maybe that works a little better. I'm sorry. All right, so we are at item 7, consent agenda. Can you gentlemen, Dr. Schroeder and Mr. David hear us okay?
I can hardly hear you, Mr. Mayor. I just go out what you say, and I
Okay. I'll try to get a little closer to the mic and speak a little louder. All right. So the motion was to approve the consent agenda by Mr. Smith and seconded by Mr. Welch. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 I hear 3 ayes. Did Mr. David vote? I don't hear Mr. David. Mr. David, did you vote?
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, what's the question today?
Did you vote on the consent agenda? We didn't hear your vote.
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. The motion carries 4-0. We'll move on to item 7, discussion approval of appropriations ordinance. So this reporting period spans 27 days and includes 2 payroll periods. A few larger expenses were included for the police department shower remodel, which I'm glad we got that. I think we got that done, right? Yes, we got that done. That's good. Rock Road lift station lining for $26,000. Land bank specials at $145,000, and city-owned specials for $76,572, and several capital projects expenses at $816,000. Any questions of the staff for appropriation ordinance?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith,
I'll make a motion to approve appropriations ordinance 21-23.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Mr. Welch and a second by, or motion by Mr. Smith and a second by Mr. Welch. I'm sorry. Any discussion? I'm hoping that the gentlemen at home are hearing us okay. So please let us know. Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 I hear 4 ayes. Motion carries 4-0. So we don't have any city requested appearances tonight. So opportunity for citizens' concerns. If there's any citizens here who would like to speak to council. And I have no input that citizens were wanting to, so I'll move on to item 11, reports. So council member reports. Dr. Schroeder, would you like to give a report?
I have no report.
Thank you. Mr. David?
No report. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
I also have no report.
Mr. Welch?
Well, I feel funny. I was going to hope everybody had a pleasant holiday. I really enjoyed my time away with my family. COVID is on a severe uprise. I hope everybody is doing everything they can do to prevent catching it or spreading it. And I hear there's some kind of football game tonight. So I wish them well.
Yeah. Okay. That
concludes my
All right.
report.
Thank you. All right. As I had mentioned in December meeting, I do have our year-end report, so I will be speaking for a little bit, so please bear with me. But the first items on the agenda to talk about is this Saturday, January 8th, Bel Air is hosting the Sedgwick County Association of Cities at 8:30 a.m. here in the Bel Air Community Room. So I encourage all council members who can make it to attend this meeting. On December 8th, I did attend the Utility Advisory Committee meeting, although I was late due to some other matters. On December 10th, I attended the K254 Corridor Association meeting. So KDOT made a presentation on the North Junction project. The green phase is wrapping up for a cost of about $50 million. And this replaced 7 bridges. Some were about the worst in the state. These bridges were reduced to 4 with the elimination of bridges over K96 near Meridian and combining other bridges in the project. So the Gold Project Phase 1 has started April 20 of last year and will finish in late 2023. That cost is $36 million. And this will replace southbound Interstate 135 exit to southbound 1235 and add a bridge over the railroad spur for new ramps from Interstate 135, replacing northbound 135 loop ramp to southbound 1235 two-lane flyover. So we'll also extend some acceleration lanes for westbound K254 ramp to southbound 135. And these improvements should eliminate the daily evening traffic jam on northbound 135 and westbound 254 going to the North Junction. In September 2022, KDOT will open bids for Gold Project Phase 2, and that project will build 2-lane direction connector from northbound 235 to eastbound K96. It will replace the loop ramp from westbound to K96 to southbound 135 to 2-lane flyover and widen southbound 135 southeastbound K96 and add a 2-lane ramp on westbound K96 to northbound 135. I know that's a lot of stuff, but basically what that will do is probably eliminate the morning traffic jam that you see every morning on K96 headed west. And it will eliminate having to go on to 135 if you're continuing from like Meridian west to maybe Rock Road. You will have a direct route there. You will not go on 135 with those improvements. So that's pretty cool, and I think they have a good project there. So I don't know what their time frame is for that, except for bid letting in September. So new officers were elected at K250 Corridor Association meeting. Kelly Herzit from Butler County is being elected to the chair, and Mike Jansen from USD 375 is the vice chair. David Dillner, El Dorado City Manager, is elected as treasurer. So on December 14th, we held an appreciation dinner for our volunteer committees, and about 20 folks attended. This is a good opportunity to visit with folks and make some personal connections. On December 16th, I attended the CCUA meeting. 3 new members of the board were introduced. Mr. Greg David from Bel Air, Mr. Jack Whitson, and Kyle Nordick from Park City. Brandy Bailey was elected chair for the next 2 years on a coin flip. I was elected vice chair, and Kyle Nordick was elected treasurer. 2 significant motions were passed authorizing the TAC to prepare expected outcomes from a facility audit. And this would not be a financial audit, but would be done by like they are done by CPAs, but this would be a facility audit to prepare and submit application also, and prepare and submit an application for any ARPA or IIJA funds that might be used for facility repairs or upgrades. So the TAC has a pretty good amount of work to do on those 2 things. So the year in review. So 2021 was another great year in Bel Air. We started the year with a salary review that took a while to bring to fruition, but we brought our entire staff up to an equivalent pay with that of the metropolitan area. Of course, with high inflation, we may need to revisit that in 2022, but for now, our pay scales are on par with the metropolitan area, and in some cases on the high end of the equivalent scale. The Woodlawn project made progress this year, not what we wanted, as we had issues getting finalized railroad agreements in place. Once that was done, it took until September for KDOT to do their review and do the bid letting. In the meantime, all the utility work was completed that could be completed before the major construction got started. We are now on the way. Maybe a bit slow starting, but it will see significant work in the spring and summer of this year. We anticipate this project will be completed in the spring or summer of 2023. We approved the following work at various developments for landscaping, plotting, stormwater drainage, sanitary sewer, water distribution, paving, and sidewalks. Not every project had very noted activity, but to summarize, here are the projects involved. And this is just in 2021. Bristol Hollows, Central Park Edition 3, Chapel Landing 3rd Edition, both Phase 1 and 2, Chapel Landing 4th Edition, Deer Run, Prestwick, second phase. Rock Springs, third edition. Rock Springs, third edition, phase 2. Rock Springs, fourth edition, and Rock Springs, seventh edition. And then Skyview at Block 49, phase 1 and 2. That's 11 active developments in Bel Air. These set the groundwork for growth in the city. Excuse me. We put in place a trial sidewalk replacement program to help citizens pay for needed sidewalk repairs. As I understand this had more applicants than authorized funds. We approved a design service agreement for 53rd Street from Oliver to Woodlawn. We anticipate seeing design for this street early in 2022. We authorized the purchase of comprehensive street evaluation with GIS database. This application will greatly enhance the city's ability to evaluate and track street conditions and help set priorities for improvements. With well over 50 miles of streets in Bel Air, it is too much data for anyone to process to make well-informed decisions on street improvements. Additionally, this application should allow us the ability to better understand the recurring budget cost for maintaining our streets in good repair. Today, that is a lot of guesswork. This will move the city from the whack-a-mole approach to a more data-driven street improvement program. We authorize the city to spend $11,000 towards encouraging KDOT to conduct a corridor management plan for K254. The K254 Corridor Development Association was able to gather enough contributions from Butler County, Sedgwick County, the city of Wichita, Keachai, El Dorado, and others to commit a total of $167,000 towards this study. We anticipate that KDOT and/or the governor will announce the start of that study in the very near future. Having the study completed will give KDOT guidance on future developments and improvements on K254. We anticipate one improvement to be a grade-separated interchange at Webb Road. Our city manager, Ty Lasher, was key and player in getting these commitments from the various communities. We authorized a 1% increase for solid waste and recycling fees and Waste Connections. I believe this was the first increase we authorized in several years. I believe going forward, we need to have a discussion with Waste Connections as there is pressure to reduce service and/or increase fees. I know many, such as myself, get little benefit in a weekly trash pickup. My cart often is minimal amount of trash. But on the other hand, there are also those who have a lot of trash every week. So possibly we could look at a more a la carte type service. These are just things to consider. We adopted the Kansas Homeland Security Region G Hazard Mitigation Plan. We do have a punch list of items to address concerning hazards and emergencies. So we look forward to addressing these issues and getting the punch list to help us mitigate against hazards and emergencies. For Public Works, we did purchase a new dump truck to help their crews better handle the variety of matters that come up without any notice, like snow events even. Huh? So, so I don't think you used it this time, did you? Yeah, that's all right. There wasn't much snow, so but we'll have them. Okay. We spent almost $250,000 for residential street repairs, for patch repairs, crack sealing, and slurry sealing. It appears some citizens thought we were paving these residential streets. This process is not paving. It is preventative maintenance to keep these streets in good repair so that they do not deteriorate to the point that they have to be rebuilt. It's about 10% of the cost of repaving. This is a more prudent process of managing street maintenance to be more cost effective. We spent almost $263,000 in crack seal, slurry seal, and striping of Greenwich and Webb roads. We also authorized the crack seal of Oliver, Woodlawn north of 45th, 45th from Woodlawn to Rock Road, as well as patchwork on Rock Road and 53rd Street. These cost just under $250,000. We approved the cleaning and installation of protective liner in the wet well of Rock Road sanitary lift station for about $26,000. We approved a cure-in-place pipe lining for sewer lines in Pearson Addition for almost $287,000. Another almost $400,000 was spent to rebuild Batten between Kruger and 48th Street. That was planned for 2020, but did not happen until 2021. Similarly, we plan to rebuild 47th Street from Lake Washout to Farmstead for about $275,000. That project has not moved forward, but we anticipate it early in 2022. These projects combined almost $1.6 million. I think that is the most the city has ever spent on infrastructure repairs in 1 year. But as everyone can see, 11 active developments, 3 street rebuild projects, 1 completed, 2 being planned. On top of Woodlawn project, our internal engineer resources are well overloaded. To address this, we contracted with engineering firms to help with the design reviews and proposal development required so that our staff engineer can devote time to oversight of getting projects done. We renewed our agreement with Park City for shared building inspection services. As a result of land sales, we reissued bonds, lowering our annual debt service obligation by almost $400,000 per year without extending the term of these obligations. We then moved all marketable land from Public Building Commission to the land bank. It was unfortunate that Hoops of Wichita was in financial difficulty. The bank took over the property. This put the facility at significant risk of not continuing as a good facility for basketball development and other sports. That facility brings some 40,000 people to Bel Aire every year. So we were fortunate that another developer with a strong interest in the success of basketball facility came along and purchased that facility. So the Hoops facility continues to operate under new owners. Our city manager utilized his skills in leveraging the purchase of the Hoops facility to also bring the developer along to purchase land along Webb Road and build 2 spec buildings there. The construction of those buildings is well underway. Along with the spec buildings, along with Webb Road, we revised and updated our spec building policy. Having this policy in place gives developers an avenue to pursue speculative developments and permit the use of industrial revenue bonds to finance those developments. The city issuance of IRBs does not obligate the city to repayment of the bonds. The bonds are repaid by the developer. But IRBs give the developer tax incentives and favorable financing terms that are not available without the issuance of IRBs. So these deals are wins for Bel Aire and wins for the developer. We denied the issuance of $12 million in bonds to finance improvements for sewer treatment at Chisholm Creek Utility Authority, CCUA. We do not believe adequate due diligence had been done prior to the engineering design of these improvements. We also learned that the improvements are not immediately needed, that current projections show expansion is not needed for about 5 years. Negotiations and due diligence are continuing with CCUA to come to a resolution as to what, if any, improvements should be done and when those should be done. We attempted to put questions on the November ballot related to mayor's term of office and term limits for elected officials. We learned in the process that some questions can only be non-binding under Kansas law, and we can only put those questions on ballots of special elections. These issues do not raise to the level of to incur for cost for special elections. So we are looking at taking 2 steps. First, we ask the Kansas legislature to review the current law and make changes so that such issues can be put to the voters on regular election ballots. And sometime in the spring of 2022, we will consider charter ordinances to implement these changes, since our surveys indicate that the majority of voters want these changes. Special recognition went out for Sunrise Christian Academy men's basketball coach Luke Barnwell, who won the 2021 Jersey Mike's Naismith High School Coach of the Year Award. That's quite an honor for a high school basketball coach. For our police, we purchased a new police cruiser, part of a replacement program that replaces cars every 5 to 7 years. We received a grant from Firehouse Subs Public Safety Foundation for 7 AEDs to install on our police cruisers. This greatly enhances our police officers and their ability to respond to cardiac emergencies as when they are the first on the scene. We entered into a government service agreement with Sedgwick County for animal control services enforcement. This is the first step in moving the city out of animal control, where we do not have the personnel trained or the equipment to address animal control issues. The current process of reporting animal control matters is confusing to citizens and difficult to get timely action when needed. Moving this to Sedgwick County for management will make the process straightforward and effective. We authorize the replacement and update of computers on police cruisers, also known as mobile data terminals. We agreed to have the Kansas Attorney General allocate funds to Bel Aire from the opioid settlement. In exchange, we agreed not to pursue such litigation separate from the AG's office. Bel Air remains one of the safest cities in Kansas. We intend to keep it that way by supporting our police department, code enforcement, as well as our public works department and recreation department. Together, these all contribute to keeping our city safe. We changed our employee recognition policy to be more performance-based. While we provided a year-end bonus in 2021, this new policy provides for bonuses to be paid upon an employee's annual review. The year-end bonuses is replaced by this performance review bonus. We requested the state legislature to bring Bel Air back under one state representative and one state senator. In redistricting 10 years ago, Bel Air was split into different House districts and 2 different Senate districts. We believe that whenever possible, cities should not be split into separate representative districts in Topeka. Our own city manager reports that we signed contracts on 8 different parcels in Bel Air in 2021. These include land in the Sunflower Commerce Park as well as other areas. There are also 5 deals in the works, but not ready for public disclosure until a deal is finalized. The land deals we have been made are market-based pricing. If one looks at the price per acre that we have been selling land, you will find that price is competitive to what land is selling in the metropolitan area. Many of these deals actually are better than they appear on the surface, as they relieve the city of the requirement to make payments on special taxes. That is about $250,000 per year that has been relieved from the city's obligation on special taxes. Additionally, one must consider the cost of holding land versus the sale of land. For example, let's assume we bought 10 acres at $20,000 per acre. That's a $200,000 debt to the city. The interest cost on that debt is about $7,600 per year. If we only pay interest on the $200,000 debt, which we did for several years, in 10 years, that interest cost alone is $76,000, or almost 40% of the purchase price. No one is going to pay us $276,000 for land when the market is only $150,000 for similar land, assuming the market price of $15,000 per acre. So say we sell the 10 acres where we paid $20,000 for $15,000. Yes, we lose $50,000 on the sale, but we stop the bleeding on 75% of the $7,600 every year in interest cost. In less than 9 years, we are money ahead on this deal. Lastly, when we sell 10 acres at $15,000 per acre, that land now goes back to the tax rolls. Assuming a developer builds 40 houses for an average value of $200,000 or a market value of $8 million, the property tax on those houses is about $150,000 each year. So selling the property at market value has 3 wins for the city. It reduces the annual interest cost on debt, it puts the property back on the tax rolls, and when fully developed, adds a sales price as an annual tax revenue for the city. In some cases, eliminates future payments on city on special taxes. Of course, this is a hypothetical example, but this is being repeated all over Bel Air some 11 plus times. It's just a few short years the city will dig out of this hole that was created with the land purchase in the past. These all help the city's bottom line. So what is my vision for the next 2 years? I've already talked about water and sewer costs with CCUA and considerations with waste management for our trash service. So no need to repeat those. To me, the bigger issues are continue selling land at market prices, continue working on roads and other infrastructure issues. Our GIS database will be a great tool to help us make data-driven decisions. To help with making financial decisions for roads, we talked with our financial advisor, Adam Pope. His recommendation that our budgets, we target reserves of 30% of revenue. He said, as long as we do not go below 15% in reserve, we do not affect our bond rating, but that the median average, not the mean average, in Kansas is 30%. So if we are 28% one year and 32% in another year, there's no concern. But in recent years, for some sound reasons, the city reserves are higher than this 30%. So I advocate that we return to the 30% target budgeting process and not be concerned about risk of not meeting 30% in a particular year. I have also asked our financial director, Ted Henry, to prepare and maintain a report of expected net sales for all property sales where the contract is not closed. This report will show the expected yield of the target by month, and the money should be realized. We can then utilize that report to help combine with our CIP budget and monies allocated to better target what projects we can do and when, assuming we are paying cash for those projects. I do not believe we should incur any additional debt for city under the current budget projections, save special assessments for developer projects, which do not affect the city's budget. I am proposing that we use cash for all capital improvement repairs as we go forward, plan for the immediate future. Of course, we should and will pursue any ARPA or IIJA funds that may become available from the federal government, assuming any strings attached to those funds are not too onerous to the city. We need to work on better coordinated agreements with Keachai, Sedgwick County, and Wichita for the maintenance of shared roads. Currently, since Bel Air has annexed both sides of several roads, we pay the full cost of maintenance, but we do not get property tax revenue from the sections of road that are in Keachai, Wichita, or Sedgwick County. That's unbalanced and needs to be addressed. I've already started discussions with Mayor Whipple of Wichita about this matter. We need to work on getting our streams cleaned and better maintained. This may not seem like a hot topic. However, if we have a heavy rain event, those streams that have not been cleaned out we will have flooding. In some cases, we need to secure the right of way to get in and clean out the streams. In one case, an HOA has taken it upon themselves to start that clean out work. I want to give a shout out to Glenwood HOA for the work that they have done on the creek running to the west side of their development. They held a work day last spring and another last fall. Some homeowners from the Willow Creek area helped with the fall work day. That job is not complete, but it's a great example of citizens taking an active role in assuring that we are working towards the common good. Lastly, we need to find better ways to promote Bel Air. Excuse me. Getting Woodlawn upgraded will be a great improvement, but we need to sell the idea of Bel Air as a place to locate future retail businesses. We have some interest, but really need to foster that so that results in actual developments. The trend in retail today is much different than it was before COVID, but according to the Wichita Business Journal, it is returning and we should be on the cutting edge to bring it to Bel Air. In summary, I thank each member of the City Council, the Bel Air staff, and the many volunteers who have all done their part to make Bel Air a better city. With your help and grace of God, we have made tremendous progress, better than I could have dreamed of. The time is now to seize upon the opportunities that lay before us. Let's continue the journey to being the best city in Kansas. Happy New Year to Bel Air. Let's continue the progress in 2022. So I now ask our city attorney for her report. I hope it's not long.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It was an awesome report. I just want to talk to council about last week you'd asked me to, or last workshop, you'd asked me to look into using speed limits to handle the dust issue in Aurora Park. So the specific question was, can we lower the speed limit to address the dust issue as a temporary solution until other solutions are explored with Aurora Park? And the reason why I didn't have that answer on the spot was because Aurora Park is a gravel road, and sometimes those are treated differently than highways or streets or residential areas. What I found out is that gravel roads are treated like regular streets as to lowering the speed. So you cannot lower the speed in Aurora Park without conducting a traffic study. That traffic study would need to be done by an engineer and done to like some sort of objective standards. There is a little wiggle room to possibly close the road or lower the speed because of a temporary hazard. However, our professional staff has a strong opinion that dust is not a temporary hazard as seen in the industry. So typically temporary hazards include like a pothole or cracks in the road or some other issue that would impede, sometimes weather, like ice, but those hazards are temporary and much more temporary than the dust problem. Or if someone is working on the road and you are limiting it to one lane while you're doing maintenance or figuring out another solution for the traffic to flow, you could close the road or limit speed for that temporary reason. However, there would be some sort of proof that there is active construction or active resolution going on. And if we didn't have a plan in place before we put those signs up, we would not fit within that scope of limiting traffic while we do X to the road. If we're just saying limiting traffic speed to address dust, that's not necessarily going to change by limiting the traffic flow. So I would probably not being clear, but you can't lower the speed in order to reduce the dust hazard temporarily unless you're working on a more permanent solution. So in speaking with our professional staff, Chief asked us to look at factors, objective factors, when considering lowering the speed, such as crash history over there, road conditions, citation history, and citizens' concerns. He mentioned that there have only been a couple of crashes reported in that neighborhood in the past 7 years, and none of those crashes were related to speed. So that doesn't quite go to the road hazard point. Road conditions, the gravel street are maintained in a reasonable manner, and that's with our engineer weighing in. It cannot be considered a driving hazard as a temporary condition because that hazard of dust is common to all gravel roads. So it's not like a unique hazard. Citation history, he checked his records. He doesn't have citation history for the area, so there's not a lot of speeding that they're citing over there. And they haven't received any citizens' concerns from the Aurora Park neighborhood, which is kind of interesting because you all received those concerns related to dust, but they hadn't been reported to our law enforcement separately. So based on that, and our city engineers, kind of the focus of her professional opinion was that the speed on days, yes, there might be the Aurora Park community might be able to point to a bus and the hazard and the dust and a picture of that. However, that condition is not fixed. On some days, the dust is a little higher. On other days, the dust is a little lower. So in those cases, cars are to adjust their driving to the conditions that exist, just as they would if water, ice, or other temporary conditions were on the road. So resoundingly, staff does not recommend you modify the speed over there. And another kind of additional point was that because Aurora Park is not a through street, it's a street that people kind of drive home on for a short amount of time, that enforcement would be to neighbors and residents, and the reporting would be there as well. Not that that's something you have to weigh in, but it would create kind of an internal enforcement in where neighbors are reporting neighbors and we're enforcing against people minutes from their home. Just something else to think about. So with that information, again, the statutes do require you to complete a traffic study in this case, unless you can fit into this exception for having a temporary road hazard, which based on the analysis that I've gone through, it's going to be tough to meet that hazard standard. However, we can look more into it if you'd like. Our city engineer is prepared to work with an engineering contractor to get the traffic study done if you prefer to do that. However, she would recommend that instead of lowering the speed to 10 miles an hour, maybe consider lowering it to 20 miles an hour if you insist on lowering the speed over there as a solution. Again, however, she would say that that's not the primary solution that's for this area. It's more of a pave the road or do some other sort of improvement to the area. And so finally, I just need guidance on next steps. We can do more research on establishing dust as a hazard. We can request the engineer get a quote on getting a traffic study done over there, or we can wait until the council has had a chance to consider the plan, the ultimate plan for Aurora Park. So if at any point I can get consensus on that, I can proceed.
Well, a couple things come to mind immediately. One is Chief says that we've not had any citations in the area, but Do we patrol that area much in that respect for that purpose? Okay. Well, and I realize it's anecdotal. I drove through that neighborhood one time. I was going through it 20 miles an hour, and somebody came up behind me going probably at least double my speed. And I don't know how common that is, but obviously they were kicking up a lot of dust, and I wasn't. And I just wondered how much that goes on. Obviously, we can't have our police force just sitting there in Aurora Park checking for speed limits all the time. But yeah, I do appreciate you're doing patrols over there. Thank you. I don't think this raises to the level of doing a traffic study myself. We're looking at a more permanent solution. We're looking at trying to do something temporary until we can put in place a permanent solution, because our citizens obviously want something done. But I'll let council speak as well. Any council members would like to speak?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
I think your proposal on just kind of waiting on that traffic study until the more formal plan is a good one. That's what I was thinking as well. I did have one question. I wouldn't have thought it to be kind of normal and customary for citizens to make those types of reports to our police department if they had concerns. Is that something that citizens should do if they have a concern about like the visibility on that road for school buses? What is the process to report that to the police department? Should they call 911 or how should that work?
So I can address the process. I'll have to have chief let you know whether he prefers 911 or another number. But our public works director, in consultation with our chief of police, can do temporary restrictions on a road very quickly. Where safety is an issue, she can bring it to the governing body and ask, just like you did on 53rd, ask that a road be closed, a road be, the traffic flow be modified in some way while something else is being done. So if the chief of police were to get some information that there was a visibility hazard or a pothole hazard that was dangerous, they could take that information, go check it out, work with the engineer and get that before this governing body to do something about. So those should be reported to either our public works or our police department. And then chief, as to reporting issues of traffic or speed issues, how should people report those?
Well, hardly a day goes by where that doesn't already happen. People call in and complain about many things, whether it be a code enforcement issue, they now call our office and that gets routed down the hall, or a police-related issue, noise, traffic issues, speeding, cars abandoned on the street. They call our office or they dial 911. And there are no impediments to anybody trying to get a hold of us, especially if they call 911. So, but to date, in my office, we have not received any calls from the Aurora Park area or on Hillcrest or 47th Street.
Chief, I'm not sure what time of the day to ask this for, but could you set up some selective enforcement over in Aurora Park? Just maybe an hour or half hour at a high traffic time of day that you know of, and just stop people and remind them. Don't even write them a ticket. Just stop them and remind them that they're going too fast.
Well, if they're going 30 miles an hour, they're following the speed limit, and that's
If they're going 30, then
Yeah.
there's nothing to
And
say. But if they're
when-
going 40 or like when 53rd was in trouble, I was going down through there and I had the same situation. Somebody come hauling up on my rear end too. I know they were way exceeding the speed limit, but I couldn't tell you how fast they were going.
when Harold Smith lives there on the corner of Parker or Pinecrest and 38th. Yeah. I did sit down there and I personally ran some radar because they had a concern, and I found nobody going over the speed limit. I'm not saying it doesn't happen,
Okay.
but I
They
don't
were
think
still
it's-
kicking up lots of dust at 30 then, or was it the
well,
day?
if you go down a gravel road at 30 miles an hour, you're going to kick up dust. That's the nature.
I
of
know,
the-
but was it like fog dust, or was it just?
It's the dust that comes up
Yeah.
from a car passing by, and then it settles back down. And that's why it's such a temporary event
Right.
that it couldn't qualify as a hazard. It's not a washed out part of the road. It's not a huge hole in the road from water washing it out. It's not a tree across the road. That's why it doesn't qualify as a hazard on a day-to-day basis.
Okay, I'm just,
And we can.
I hear people complain people are going fast, but I don't know how fast they're going. And if you've actually run an enforcement and nobody's going over 30, then I don't know what else we can do.
I think we've got a couple of plans that we can put in place to, if we can get some cooperation from some of the neighbors to get some speed information.
Okay, that would be good. I don't want to fine anybody. There are people that live in our town and pay taxes, but I want to do what we can to stop the dust without.
Our city attorney alluded to that. If you take action to reduce the speed in that neighborhood, you would, I mean, for a lot of people, and I provided a study to the city attorney from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, I believe it was. And what it says in there is if people don't feel the speed limit is justified, they're really not going to follow it, even though there's signs up. And we see that every day. You see it every day. Because there are some people on Woodlawn right now who want to drive 45 in the reduced 30-mile-an-hour work zone.
Well, I was kind of surprised by that zone today myself.
Okay.
I was going 40 miles an hour and all this is 30-mile-an-hour sign. I'm like, when did that go up?
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago. Okay.
Well, some of them went up this morning.
Oh,
So
some more.
if people don't think it's justified, they're not very inclined to follow it. So if there are people in the neighborhood who believe that it's been 30 and I'm going to continue driving 30, what you're doing is you're legislating people into a position where they don't feel it's justified and they're going to continue to drive, and it makes them violators. And our interest isn't to go out and write as many tickets as we can. We can evidence that. But we want people to change their behavior to be safe.
Right.
And at this point, I don't personally, my professional opinion is that we don't need to change the speed limit there for some of the people who have complained to reduce their dust problem, because those are two separate issues.
Right. I understand. And like I said, if you've been watching stuff and people are really following the speed limit or real close to it, and we still have a horrible dust problem, that's the best we can do. But if people are going 40 or 50 down through there, we need to do something about them.
Well, as I
And you
said, I
can't
haven't
catch
gotten any
everybody. You can't watch
complaints.
them all day long.
So what we can do is we can try to figure out a way to capture some speed over time. What people are driving on a couple of stretches of that road to see if there is a problem, and that way we can have some empirical data to stand on.
Right. I appreciate that.
Any other questions for our city attorney?
So it sounds like at this point, we'll hold off on any proposal for a traffic study and look at that as maybe a part of a bigger solution.
Yeah, I'm interested in seeing the police chief being able to put something in place to find out what his traffic speeds are. And I kind of understand I think I know what he's talking about, but that's a different subject we discuss here. All right, thank you. Was that the end of your report?
Yes, Mr.
I don't
Mayor.
want to cut you off.
Sorry about that.
All right, thank you. Move on to the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. Today I received some hard data to support what the mayor was talking about earlier during his report about the growth of the city. For 2021, we had a total of 118 total units constructed. Of that, 67 were new homes, single-family residences. 42 were duplexes. And we had 9 units or 9 buildings that were 3 or 4 unit buildings. So the 3 or 4 unit building would be what's happening in the villas at Prestwood for the senior housing. So that comes to a total of 118 new housing units with approximately 35 million valuation. So That's, you hear Ted and I talk a lot about when our valuation goes up 8-10%. It's majority of that is not because of increased property values for current residents, even though that does happen, and especially in the market that we're in today, that is happening. But it's more about 118 new homes that are being taxed and added to our tax value. So that's pretty exciting to see that kind of growth. And then the last thing I just wanted to mention was city office will be closed on January 17th in recognition of Martin Luther King Day. So that's all I had, Mayor.
Very good. Thank you. Moving on to item 12, ordinance resolutions and final actions. So the first item is Bel Air Chamber funding agreement. So Bel Air Chamber was founded in 2009 and it has been functioning since. Like many service organizations, they are struggling to stay relevant, obtain volunteers, and increase participation at their monthly meetings. The Chamber board has determined it needs roughly $30,000 annually to hire a part-time director who can grow the organization, create value, and keep it viable. As a result, staff has drafted a funding agreement between the Chamber and the city. The request of the Chamber from the Chamber is $20,000, and they will assist with community events and fundraisers. The Chamber President, Gary O'Neill, is here to present the request and answer any questions. Mr. O'Neill.
Thank you, Mayor and governing body. My name is Gary O'Neill. I live at 4967 North Hillcrest in Bel Air, and I am the current president of the Bel Air Chamber of Commerce. Since I live on Hillcrest, if I could digress just for a moment, we're talking about dust. There are 3 blocks on Hillcrest north of 45th that historically, since the founding of Bel Air, were dirt roads like the roads over in Aurora Park. 20 years ago, the city met with each homeowner in each of the 3 blocks north of 45th on Hillcrest to see if they would want to pave those roads. And we're willing to pay specials. A meeting was held with the residents in each block. 2 blocks of the residents decided they moved here to live on dirt roads and they weren't going to pay for dirt roads. So they were happy to be on dirt roads. Fortunately, the block that I live on, all of our neighbors decided we wanted to pave our road. And with the development that was going on in Bel Air Heights, just to the west of us at that time, there were some roads going to come through, 48th Street was. And while the equipment was in the area, our neighborhood agreed to pay specials. We had our street paved. It raised our valuations on our property, not being on the dirt road. We've paid off those specials, and we have now given that road to Bel Air. And this is a little historical information for the mayor and the governing body, that citizens can take action in your own hands and better your situation if you can get a group of people willing to do that. Now, I do know there are people in Aurora Park that have lived here for many years, and they moved here when those are dirt roads. And if they want the city to pave their dirt roads, I can tell you, I'm not in favor of it. They can pay it for it just like some of those citizens did. Okay, enough of that. Thank you for letting me digress. But it is nice, and if you've grew up on dirt roads, whether it's 15 miles an hour or 30 miles an hour, depending on how dry it is and which way the wind's blowing, you're going to have dirt blowing. There doesn't even have to be a car moving down the street. You're going to have dirt. Okay, there was a workshop last week. I know that this funding was on the agenda for the workshop, and I asked, should I hang around? I was here for another event that was going on, and I was told that it probably would not come up at the workshop because there are too many other things for the governing body to go over. So I wasn't available to answer questions because I did not attend. And then when I got home, I found out there turned out to be a number of questions that were asked. So I was asked to come here this evening to address any questions you may have. But I can tell you that the Bel Air Chamber of Commerce has reviewed this new chamber funding policy that the city has presented to us. Our board has looked it over. Our executive director and I met today with the rec director, Brian Hayes, and also with Ashley over there about the event portion of this funding agreement. And we're in agreement with all of the items on the funding policy. And our chamber is looking forward, our members to kick off 2022 and get started. So just let us know if you have any questions. I'll be glad to try to address them. If not, let's get the funding and let's get started.
Sounds good to me.
I will tell you this, that we have reviewed and put numbers to our membership fees that were originally put in back in 2010. We were not on a par with other chambers in the area. And so we have raised our membership fees for the coming year of 2022 to try to raise additional funds. And we now know from the numbers we put together how many companies we needed, the size of companies we needed because of the tiers of memberships required depending on the size of the company. And we've got a plan. We are updating our website. We've ordered all kinds of new information to put out. And I can only say that the executive director that I have now, this is the fourth that I've had in the last 2 years. And I have a firm commitment for a minimum of 18 months while she is working on her master's degree. And she has done a lot of marketing in the past with nonprofits. She's good at fundraising. And she's exciting to work with. I'm thrilled to work with her. And I think you'll see some good things coming forward in 2022 for the chamber. I will say, and if you're not aware, some of the things the chamber did this year, we put together the Welcome Home edition. That's in all the local businesses and here at City Hall. That was done by the chamber in conjunction with Dark Valley News, who printed it. And it's got all the information regarding Bel Air. You should be familiar with that. If you're not, you need to get familiar with it. Because we're starting, tomorrow is our chamber meeting, and we're getting started on our 2022 edition. This was the one we did for last year. We're also looking at doing spotlight on our members that will come out in the Bel Air Breeze. We will spotlight and highlight a business, hopefully monthly, and in 2022, and it will give them a boost and give them a spotlight in the paper, and they can say what they want, and we'll do some advertising for spotlight businesses that are in Bel Air. I also heard at the workshop that there were 60 businesses in Bel Air. If there truly are 60 businesses in Bel Air, the chamber would like to have a list of who those 60 businesses are. I was thinking, well, maybe there are 60 businesses licensed to do business in Bel Air. But if there are actually 60 in Bel Air, the chamber wants that list. We want to start hitting all 60 up. With that, any questions?
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Smith.
So it's been a while since we had our workshop, but I think as we were talking about this funding agreement, one of the topics of conversation that kind of came up was really about the purpose of the chamber. And I think we started having a little bit of philosophical conversation on, is the chamber for the businesses, or is the chamber for the community, or is it a little bit of both? And I think that, what drew that topic to front of mind was looking at the kind of event planning stuff that we tied in with this funding agreement. And so I guess I'm just interested in your perspective on what the chamber is really looking to accomplish over the next couple of years. And what is your perspective on, one, what are you trying to accomplish? And two, really the fit with the fit of the event planning stuff in with what the chamber is looking to do.
Okay, let me read the mission statement of the chamber, which was drafted in 2010. I was not on the chamber when this happened. The mission statement says the Bel Air Chamber of Commerce has been established to foster a medium for enriching the lives of its citizens and the businesses of Bel Air, fostering communication between government and business, promote business and community growth, interact with the community utilizing civic, social, and cultural activities for those purposes. So under our mission statement from 2010, the events that we will be working on under this funding policy falls right in line with helping promote things for the citizens. I can also tell you, as far as helping with businesses, we go to mixers. There was just a mixer in November that Bel Air Chamber, Keachai Chamber, Valley Center, and Park City all attended, and we had representatives there from state senator's office. We also had Senator Moran's office were there, and so we do get to talk with government officials about things in our area, in our community. We also work with the Chamber of Commerce in Wichita Area Chamber of Commerce on legislative issues for South Central Kansas. And our Bel Air Chamber has worked with them, and we have approved the legislative agenda for 2022 for South Central Kansas for all the area here in Sedgwick County. So yes, we look forward to working on events to have more things for the city. The chamber ourselves would like to have some event as a fundraiser and involve the citizens and the businesses in it. And I think you will see a lot of new things coming forward in 2022 with the chamber. I can tell you one of the things that I would like to see in the area, since we're talking about hoops this evening and the basketball, it's unfortunate, but you may or may not be aware, but the Best Western Hotel at 53rd Street and I-135 in Park City is now closed. It was sold to Word of Life. It's going to make a preparatory school out of it. And I can tell you that the city of Park City, from that one hotel, which was a host hotel for hoops, it was a host hotel for WSU, it was a host hotel for Hartman Rita. That one hotel brought in $130,000 a year in bed taxes. It would be nice to have a hotel in Bel Air but bring in $130,000 a year in bed taxes. When we have hoops over here, we have the things going on over in Greenwich, and pull that stuff this way. So we will do everything we can and contact as many people in the area as we can to help the city in any way possible to help grow the business side. But we want to help our local businesses grow their business here in Bel Air. There's more rooftops. More rooftops means there's more opportunities for business. Businesses follow rooftops.
Thank you for that. That's really helpful. I think, I was just wanting to make sure that like the city hadn't, talked the chamber into doing something that was kind of outside the scope of its, mission and vision. And it sounds like that's certainly not the case there. So thank you for that.
We're going to grow that portion of what we do with helping with the events. We had a very productive meeting today with the rec center people, and everybody's on board and we're ready to go.
Sure.
Dr. Schroeder.
I talked quite about the workshop, so I won't say as much here, and I hear most of what Gary's saying, but it's not great. When I sit around and think about, you sit around with your friends, you complain that the government's too big, and you kind of fund things that are outside of the scope. We'll spend $90,000 on the chamber to hire an employee that doesn't work for the city. I don't understand why this is in the purview of what the city does. I mean, we should put that $90,000 in the next 3 years toward roads. And as far as, marketing and whatnot, the city has a marketing director that we pay quite a bit to. Her name is Tristan, and, she built a website to market, so on and so forth. So paying another $30,000 to hire another employee to do duplicate work, it just seems like that we're basically paying a salary, but we have no oversight of it all, of it. So
You have oversight because you have someone from the council or from the city is going to become a board member of the chamber for this year and ensuing years. You will have oversight over this, and it's not $90,000, it's $20,000. So and it's our,
over the next 3 years, or we go 30,000.
we're not asking for
This
30,000.
is something that a city should do. Why can't we put this for roads? We're never going to get our money back. An 18-year return on investment for solar wasn't good enough, and that's understandable. I don't understand. In 18 years, we'll spend $540,000 on the chamber, right? Are we getting that back?
It is our,
For sure we are.
Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor.
I feel like, this is an organization that businesses are supposed to run, and if it's not something the businesses can do, if you're a capitalist, you say, well, then it doesn't continue to go, and the government doesn't come in and save. And so I just can't support it.
I understand. I know exactly where you're coming from. I listened to every word you said at the workshop, although I was sitting at home. I asked previously to the city council, at the council meeting of the city, I believe it was in October or November. I said, the city needs to decide whether you want to be a bedroom community and have a chamber of commerce. And if you want to have a chamber of commerce in a bedroom community, you may need to help fund it. If you don't want to fund it, then there won't be a chamber of commerce in this bedroom community. Until we can grow more members, and it is our goal to lessen what we ask from the city each year, we would like to become self-sustaining. That won't happen in 1 year. It may take 3 or 4 or 5 years, but that's the goal. And as the city of Bel Air grows and there's more rooftops and there's more businesses come that way, there's more opportunities for the chamber to become self-sustaining. So I wasn't here when the chamber was formed. I'm trying to make the chamber go if that's what the governing body wants to do. You have the vote. If you do not want to fund the chamber, I'm going to go home and watch K-State play football. If you want to fund the chamber, then I'm going to go home, call our executive director, let the board know we've got funded, and we're going to go to work. So it's in your hands. I'm happy either way, whatever you want to do.
Mr. Mayor,
Dr. Schroeder.
I think that Gary has hit the nail on the head here, saying he is doing what he should do to keep the chamber going. He has recognized the only way to keep the chamber going is for the city to fund it. And he's obviously hoping the city wouldn't do it forever, but once you start giving out funds, it's usually hard to pull back. And so I think he is doing the right thing here. He's making the only decision that he knows how to make to keep the chamber going and try to make it a success. I think it's unfortunately upon us to have to make a hard decision of what we're going to do. We're stuck with the hard part. Gary's doing what he should be doing, and I think it's time for us to have to make the hard decision to say, this is outside the purview of the city to fund this.
Right. The chamber currently has funding to run through the first, maybe middle of April, which would get us through the first event the city would put on. That would give us 3 months to work for new membership at the new increased rates to see, and with our new executive director, to market and try to grow what we can in the first quarter of the year. That would help us get through the first event of the year, the spring event, on our own funding. If you choose to wait until April to address this again to see what progress we make, I have no problem with that. If you choose not to fund it tonight, I have no problem with that. If you choose you want to fund it, I have no problem with that. This is a decision that you as governing body has to make for the city of Bel Air. Whatever decision you make, we will abide by.
Well, I agree that this is probably something that's not usually city funded, shouldn't be, because it doesn't benefit the city as a whole the way most people see it. But if you can bring in hotels and some other businesses, if that's something you can drum up, I'm willing to give you at least a 1 year chance to see how much progress you can make.
The agreement we have is 1 year to be reviewed each year.
Right.
There's no guarantee there's anything in 2023. And if we make no progress and I decide in July or the board decides in July that we don't want to do this anymore, then the funds that have been encumbered, that have not been spent, will be returned back to the city.
Right. And the same council will be here next January. So if you haven't shown progress, I'm sure we will not fund you next year.
That's your decision.
Very good. Any other questions or discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith?
do you think the chamber will get to a point where it is self-sustaining in the next 5 years?
There is, depending upon the growth of businesses, and we're not just talking in Bel Air, because this is a Bel Air area chamber of commerce. And how successful we are in getting businesses to buy memberships with the Bel Air, we could be self-sustaining in 5 years, but it's not going to be at a level where you have a business that has 1 to 5 people in it that pays $50 a year membership. You're going to have someone larger that's got 100 or 200 employees that's going to pay, $400 or $500 a year membership, which is what we want to do. We want to get, not only, it's a numbers thing. I mean, it's business. It's a numbers thing. I've run the numbers. I know what they are. I could have told you at the workshop. I've broken it out.
If any other discussion? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I've opened my mouth several times on this. I will make a motion to approve the Bel Air Chamber funding agreement as presented and authorize the mayor to sign.
I'll second that.
A motion by Mr. Welch to approve and a second by Mr. Smith. Any additional discussion before we vote?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
I just want to say that it sounds like we have a pretty gung-ho organization that's looking to try to do some pretty big things here in Bel Air. And so I think that this is worth pursuing at least for a year and to see what they can do. And that's why I'm going to support this tonight.
Thank you. Any other discussion? I am also supportive of this. I think chambers of commerce do help cities and help businesses to get things done and work together. So that's my 2 cents worth. But hearing no other discussion, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. I hear 3 ayes.
That
And
was great.
opposed?
Aye.
And I assume that's Dr. Schroeder that's opposed. Is that correct? Just to clarify, just make sure I'm hearing correctly.
Sorry, was that to me?
Did Dr. Schroeder, were you the one that voted opposed to this motion?
I voted against it.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify. Okay. So the motion carries 3-1 with Dr. Schroeder opposed. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Item B is consider selecting a provider for outsourced IT services. So the city contracts for IT services and has been utilizing one source since 2016. Staff has had issues and several services being provided and therefore sent out a request for proposal for IT services to a number of companies. Ted Henry and his committee reviewed all the proposals and are recommending changing to Gilmore Solutions. So Ted is here to explain the process and discuss the companies and answer questions related to his recommendation. Mr. Henry.
Thank you, Mayor. It's one of my favorite other duties as assigned in Bel Air employee world. I'm in charge of the IT contract. So as the mayor said, we put together a selection committee and requested requests for proposals. The city has historically contracted outside service provider for IT services. This includes the network and server administration, system security, desktop application support, strategic planning, help desk support, end user training, and then inventory and disposal of all IT equipment in the city. Municipal governments are very unique in their IT needs, and they have a variety of issues that they all handle at once. We have our run-of-the-mill administrative functions. We have a 24/7, 365 police department, public works, water, sewer utilities. So there's a lot that goes into IT for a municipality. In October of I just looked back, it's all Chief Atterbury here, and I don't think he's been a police officer for 40 years. I don't think him starting off would think he would care so much about an IT contract for the city he's working for, but I believe he has a very strong vested interest in this issue. I put together a selection committee to review the RFPs. It consists of a Lieutenant Fox, our communications director, a city treasurer, and then Ann, our public works, got some input as well. We looked at each of them and rated them, evaluated them based on industry experience, demonstrative customer service, quality and support, previous experience, vendor strength and stability, reporting capabilities, and financial considerations. The selection committee determined that Gilmore Solutions was the best qualified. of the firms because of their industry experience and expertise. Gilmore is one of the most experienced government IT companies in the area with more than 20 public sector clients, including the city of Valley Center, Newton, Goddard, Heston, and many more. These type of communities are very similar to Bel Air and have the similar IT infrastructures, IT needs, and IT goals. Each RFP had a similar IT experience, credentials, but some respondents really relied heavily on large call centers. So if I had something wrong with my desktop, I would get a 300-person call center, and maybe they don't know me. They don't know even where Bel Air is. I have some of that trouble with other areas. I call a call center and they have no idea what Bel Air is, or even that I'm from Kansas. And also there's some in our IT service respondents that were very low numbers of staff on staff. We felt Gilmore was a good mid-sized company. Gilmore was a good mid-sized company that employed 21 technical team members, with 12 of them being senior engineers. Additionally, Chief Atterbury requested that all IT techs that work on our equipment, especially PD equipment, are able to pass a KBI background check, as well as other requirements. Gilmore and TK Fast were the only response who met that requirement or indicated they met that requirement in their response. After expertise and experience, the selection committee reviewed each proposal and called on references to determine customer service, who delivered the best customer service. This was a pretty entertaining and fun thing for the selection committee to do. I always try to call who they, it's kind of like a job interview. You call a reference, who they list, but the best conversations you have is the front desk clerk or the secretary that gets you to the person. We found a lot like calling Ty at the city. He knows a little bit about everything, but if you really wanted to talk to somebody, you might have to talk to Lieutenant Fox. We tried to pinpoint and call references that maybe were inside the organization, and believe it or not, Gilmore came out on top of that as well. Exercise really with the experience of dealing with IT companies, it really affects every employee in our organization. And when something goes wrong, the calls start coming to supervisors, and what it ends up doing is taking a lot of time away from supervisors as well as others when issues pile up. So we asked, what differentiates yourself from all other people in your field? And I thought Gilmore provided a pretty good response. They said we have 3 differentiators: trusted communication, which we felt is probably one of the most important thing, and nobody else really addressed how important it is for an IT company to communicate where we're at in an issue and how close are we to get it resolved, because sometimes issues are hard and they take maybe a week, but as long as you're both on the same page and knowing it's going to take a week, it lessens it improves the trust and lessens the skepticism of, is my need being met? So that was our first one: expert level security, and then proven strategic process, which kind of brings us to the pricing models. The 2022 budget has $75,000 for this type of IT services. That's $6,250 a month. Gilmore came in at $4,750 for their standard monthly service, but they do have a one-time setup fee for $13,500. When asked Gilmore Solution why you impose that, because the next company was about $5,000 for an onboarding fee. They really went through step by step with me what they bring out a technician and sit with every single employee. They train the employees how to use their system, their help desk system, evaluate that piece of equipment, and put it into the strategic plan. I know the mayor talked a little bit about the GIS study we're doing with streets, and in our big report, we kind of said we've been on the philosophy of put a Band-Aid on it, and that really wasn't a knock on the way we've been doing IT in the past. It's something we've had to do. We filled a lot of potholes around here, but with the growth and success of the city, we really want to partner with companies and people that have a long-term vision that we can really set pole markers up and improve our IT capabilities. Also, as you know, we're smaller staff, and the more IT capabilities we have, maybe the leaner and meaner we can get, the more efficient we can get. So I was really impressed with their proposal on how they tackle planning for the future and that type of strategic plan that they have. I'm a big believer in this growing city, and I think that's the type of philosophy we need to start taking from this time on. Other financial considerations, it is a little different than what we're used to. We're used to kind of a one monthly fee, and then everything will be taken care of. Gilmore, and as well as pretty much all the other service provider goes to, you get pretty much unlimited on-site support for existing equipment. But if we would happen to buy a new computer, they're going to charge a per hour rate to set up the computer. The way I say is, really it'll be in with the purchase of the computer, the built-in cost with that. So that does have a little effect on our budgets, but from experience, it's a better product if we spend the time to set something up right. So I'm really not opposed to that type of structure, and that seems to be where the market is trending. With that, the selection committee recommends Gilmore Solutions for our IT services. Any questions? I'll more than happy to answer, or we do have a representative from Gilmore here that can answer questions as well.
Thank you. I appreciate the overview and all the things that you've been doing to try to get this before us. So thank you for that. And Mr. Lasher and I have had this conversation before. One of the most frustrating things to me in any organization, you buy this applications and then it doesn't get implemented well and it doesn't get used. And I see this in businesses I audit quite often, and it's just like, oh my gosh, why did you even bother buying that? But I don't say that to them, but that's just my thought. It's like, why did they go through that process when they're not doing it? Well, this is the backbone to make those applications work. If this doesn't work, you're just going to make those applications fail anyway. So I appreciate the thoroughness of going through all this and some of the history that I understand about what we've had. It's we got to make these backbones work, otherwise the systems don't work, and that's not a good thing. So I don't have any other questions or concerns right now. I'll allow council to speak if they have questions.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Welch.
Just a couple of things. It looks like we really only have two options, Gilmore and TK Fast, because of the security concerns.
It depends on what we can do. So sometimes with the companies, I didn't explore further, but you can designate an employee only to touch our equipment and have them KBI certified. So that's the way we've done it in the past. I don't know how we would do it if it was, like you said, a 300-person call center. So I would say, we have all the options will be available, and I'm sure they'll be able to work with us. But those were the only two companies that specifically said they're all KBI certified.
Okay, where is Gilmore located?
So they have they started out as Sterling, but they have an office in downtown Wichita as well.
Oh, so they're very local.
Yeah, very
Okay.
local.
And if we bring on a new employee, do we have to pay an hourly fee for them to sit down with that new employee?
Sorry about that. Chris Schneider, Director of Business Development with Gilmore Solutions. New employees, that's part of normal everyday business. So if you would have a new employee starting, basically you put in a support ticket so we can get when are they starting, and then we prepare everything for them, email address, accounts, all that stuff, and hand that over to their manager. And then once they start, we schedule a call with them to talk through, how to contact us, what information we're looking for, and all that's included in the ongoing price.
Okay, because there was a fee for helping them learn how to do everything here. I can't the help desk tools and whatever else. Like, that was the $13,000
The
fee.
onboarding up front is more, it's more than just training. So that's really us taking the time to get to know your guys' equipment, your guys' software, how you operate, your people, your processes, and putting that all together. I mean, that is the framework from the beginning, and we want that strong. Understanding everything you guys do and how you do it, so that when we are talking strategies and, you know, making recommendations for processes and new equipment, just to, you know, where can technology help you, we want to have as much information as much as possible. So all that is put together up front, all the, you know, network diagrams, strategic roadmaps. We want a starting place, and that's what that $13,000 is doing.
Okay. And your company size, it says 21 technical members, but what's the full company? 30, 40?
32-ish right now.
Here's the guy with the real questions.
Mr. Mayor. Yeah, well, thank you for the response to the proposal, or our request for proposal, and for answering some of the questions that I think Ted sent you from me by email as well. I do have a couple more. In terms of your staff location, is everyone US based that would be working with us?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then on the well, this is maybe more of a question for our attorney. In the contract, I was a bit confused about the kind of the term of the agreement, and it says that the contract's enforced for a period of 1 year unless either party provides 30 days written notice. I'm not sure if that means that this is a cancel at any time with 30 days notice type of agreement, or if this is no, it renews annually and you have a 30-day window to cancel. And just wanted to get some clarification on exactly what we're signing up for here under this agreement. Is it locking us in for a year, or if we get 6 months into this and we're not happy with our service, is there an exit clause? What does this actually mean?
So without any further explanation or further kind of consensus on what that means, we interpret that we can cancel anytime with 30-day notice, and that the contract is in place for 1 year otherwise. So
What I would say is I'd mimic what she's saying. I mean, if you wanted to go to bat, usually if you're going back to the agreement, some bad stuff has happened. You got to put this language in place for bad things, and we don't like to get there. When Ted and I were talking a little bit about that, you know, I told him basically, you don't want to be in a contract with anyone who doesn't want to be in that. That's not a good relationship to be in, and that's not what we're looking for as a company. I know that's not what you guys are looking for. Usually how we handle those, you know, let's say there's another 6 months to get through the whole year. We want to meet if there's problems that are causing us to look into this and to have discussion about that and put a, you know, resolution plan in place, a 30, 60, 90-day points. Hey, we're going to meet these milestones, and this is what we're going to provide to show you that we're coming around and we're making things better. If we don't meet that, or we just say, hey, it's time to part ways, it's just not working for us, then we just separate.
And then one other question I had is, you know, as I read through this, it looks like there's a number of things that can cause, you know, additional costs throughout the month, or kind of incidentals for different maybe projects or services that folks might request. How does that work? I guess what I'm worried about is maybe different employees call in and they ask for some stuff and they maybe don't realize it costs extra. And then, you know, at the end of the month, Ted gets this bill that's much larger than he had expected and is surprised by an extra $3,000 or $5,000 on the monthly bill. Is there any sort of, you know, approval process that gets gone through before extra fees are incurred, or cap on those at a monthly level? What does that typically look like?
Yeah. So during that onboarding process, we talk a lot about policies and procedures. How are our teams supposed to operate with your staff? So who are those people that can make those decisions on purchasing stuff or approving something that's billable? And we'll talk through that, and that gets put into our system. So when an engineer clicks on your company, they're going to see process for approval, and they're going to know these are the people listed that I've got to go to get approval for things. Also with, you know, he mentioned, or you guys talked about, you know, we charge for installing new hardware, and then it gets absorbed into the agreement. The goal of that is if we're doing the right things in our strategic planning sessions, you know, we're trying to get 3 to 5 years of budgets and new technology out there that we're looking at. hopefully those are in line with, what we're looking at from a budget wise. We're going to approve those year to year, just like you guys do. And so typically those costs aren't surprises. I mean, that's what we all want to avoid. No surprises is the goal. The way I talk about that, I could give you a number that would include those things, but then we're having conversations of, man, that's running well. Maybe we want to get another year out of it, but you've already paid me to replace it. So that's why we moved to the model of just, charging or putting that on the quote when it's time to replace. That you're paying for the services at that time instead of upfront over year to year.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any other questions I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name. I know you gave
Chris Schneider.
Chris Snyder?
Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Snyder or Mr. Henry?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr.
can you,
David.
I'm not sure if you can hear me.
Yes, I can. Mr. David.
Okay, excellent. This is really to Mr. Henry again regarding the incidentals. Thanks again for all your effort that you put in developing this list and narrowing it down. Have you done any estimate about what these incidentals would add up to over the year? And considering that high upfront cost, would we still be under our IT budget?
Yeah. So when I say 75,000 for an IT budget, that's really for the day-to-day mandatory services. When we buy a new computer, it'd come out of equipment, office furniture and equipment, and each budget has, say, a line item that satisfies those needs. So if we're talking, and right now in 2022, pretty much all we have one server, and that's on a equipment replacement plan, which is a non-budgeted fund. So we'll be able to see that in front of the council and purchase that product as it comes up. As far as every day to day computer equipment, purchasing that, I don't see an extra $100, $200 per machine that we've budgeted that's going to really affect our budget for 2022. Now, after the strategic plan process, what's going to happen is we're going to find the actual cost of how much IT costs each year. And I don't expect it to be skyrocketing problems. We've just replaced our server 2 years ago, our main driver server, but those are on a 5-year life cycle. So really anything when we're talking added cost, we might see a little bit increase, but again, we'll save time with downtime if something's not set up right, as well as what I'm interested in is because we're working with someone that's that involved, we might see better prices as well on that equipment, which helps as well.
Thank you.
So I know the question was answered, but I, for some reason, blanked out when it was answered. What is the control in place to keep us from having surprise billing at the end of the month?
I'm the only authorized representative.
So if somebody says, "Hey, I need this done," that's going to get booted up to you.
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
Unless it's Ty. No.
Ted
but
doesn't let me.
that's your problem.
Ted doesn't let me buy anything either.
Good job, Ted.
All right. Thank you,
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Smith.
One question on our action tonight to clarify: are we approving a proposal with contracting to follow, or are we approving the contract? It looks like an actual contract was part of our packet.
My understanding was the proposal, but
I
we can
would say
approve.
proposal.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah, and so a contract will follow.
Contract will, yeah.
Okay.
Or and authorize the mayor to sign, I think would do it.
Right. So if you are comfortable with the proposal being kind of combined into the actual contract, then you can approve in just a one step, like approval proposal and contract to follow, like you were wondering. But if you'd like to see the proposal finished and then enter a contract process, we can do that as well.
I'd certainly like to make sure you had enough time to go through the whole contract and make sure everything was good.
So, yeah. So we will have contract to follow.
Okay.
So you're wanting just to approve the proposal. Would we need to come back to council to have the contract approved? I just want to get started as quick as possible if we could.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
for our city attorney, have you had a chance to review the details of the contract that's in our packet?
I did review it as in context that this is the proposal, this is what the contract could look like, but I did not do, this is our final binding contract review, which is a little different.
So I guess we could probably approve it with subject to modifications by our attorney.
So yeah, I would like at least some room in
Final
that.
approval by our attorney.
So a question for Mr. Snyder to please confirm that that works, if you would, please, on the record.
Yes, that'll work.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sure there are some little things, like I noticed the date is actually March of last year. So I'm sure there are some little things that need adjusted.
Okay.
So I'm happy to do a final review and work with Mr. Snyder to finalize any details or normal city standards as well.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
I'll make a motion to accept the proposal from Gilmore Solutions, subject to modifications from our city attorney, and authorize the mayor to sign the final contract documents.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Mr. Smith and a second by Mr. Welch, and the motion is to accept the proposal subject to modification by our city attorney. Any other discussion? Dr. Schroeder.
My only comment would be, well, obviously Justin probably knows the most about this, and I trust his, and Ted would probably figure out the best fit in this. But I would also encourage Ted that if this does not work out for some reason, don't be fall prey to the sunk cost fallacy where you're unwilling to change again. If we're not getting the kind of service that we need, we need to be willing to change it. We shouldn't be afraid to do that. We need to have quality IT service. Because modern day, you can't hardly work without it. So if it's not happening, we need to be willing to move on again.
Mr. Mayor, we would still need authorizing for signature, whether it's authorize the mayor to sign.
I did
You did
include
make
that
that-
in my motion.
You did? I'm sorry.
Authorize the mayor to sign the final
Okay.
contract documents.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Here, 4 votes in positive, opposed. Motion carries 4-0. Thank you. Item B is change order 1 from Dollinger Construction through Pearson's Construction. So the city has received 2 change order requests from Dollinger to address 2 water line issues along Woodlawn reconstruction project. Jay Engelmeyer with MKEC is here to explain the change orders and options as well as answer questions. And Stevens is also, the city engineer, is also here to comment and concerns.
So I'd like to start off a little bit. These change orders are being brought to you a little prematurely in that they have not gone through the general contractor, which is Pearson Construction. These are change orders that were proposed by Dollinger, a subcontractor to Pearson's, so they are not in final form and they're not 100% ready to go. But with the status of the Woodlawn project, things take a little bit of time to get put together, and then they happen really, really fast. So I'm going to be on vacation next week. I'm not going to have time to prepare anything for the council meeting following. So I wanted to make sure that this is in front of you at this time so we can start the discussions and get council's temperature on where they would like to go. That being said, the change orders were provided to us during the holiday break. We were working, but many contractors were not. So there were not a whole lot of discussions that occurred last week. These are still being reviewed in depth by both my staff, by Jay and his staff, as well as KDOT. So I do want to give you a heads up that these are not in final form, but they are in enough of a form for discussion. And so that is, I know there will be a Woodlawn critical path policy discussion a little bit later on in the agenda, but this is part of my effort to keep council informed, keep things moving forward.
So just to clarify, the action this evening, we would not take action on these two change orders, but we would just discuss them? Is that what you're suggesting?
What I would, since they are not in final form, we do not have the final complete numbers. I would like council's direction and authorization to proceed moving forward with change orders or not, as your pleasure. But knowing that these are not in final form, I will be communicating closely with Mr. Lasher, Ms. Kelly, as well as the rest of the project team and with city council, so everybody can be kept informed and up to date. With timing of the essence, I wanted to make sure we got in front of you, talked about change orders, got your temperature so we can move forward accordingly. So hopefully that makes sense. Apologize that they're not in final form, but they're not ready yet. With the holidays, things have been delayed just a little bit. So with that being said, change order number 1 is for some valving along Woodlawn. These are as the contractor was looking at the plans for the actual construction and planning out their construction work, they questioned whether or not there should be a valve located on either side of the railroad property. The reasons for that is you can isolate that line underneath the railroad and keep people in service. In talking with our staff, Mr. Tim Aylmore, who's been with the city for many years, knows the system like the back of his hand. As he was looking at this, he strongly suggested that we include these valves. It would increase the operation and the flexibility of the system, and it would allow us to keep 16 customers in service while work is being done on that line underneath the railroad, be it with the work that we're doing right now or be it into the future. In my opinion, I am here as city staff to ensure that my time is spent not only looking at today's flexibility, but flexibility 50 to 100 years into the future. Anything that I do, I want to make sure is for the benefit of the future citizens of Bel Air as well as today. So I don't take anything lightly. I want to make sure that things are well useful and not just temporary. So that's kind of one of the issues on the valves. It does bring a lot of flexibility. It helps keep people in service. Water can be fed to those customers from both sides, from the north of the tracks as well as the south of the tracks, to keep folks with water. There would be a temporary shutdown. I'm not going to hazard a guess as to how long because I'm not a contractor, but to get those valves installed, they would be just cut in to the line, and Jay may be able to help me a little bit more with the specifics of that, but it would be a very limited shutdown as opposed to the longer shutdown needed if you were removing a pipe and connecting a pipe. So the valves would be very helpful. The second change order that I have for you tonight is on the water line that goes underneath the railroad. Dollinger had, again, as they were reviewing this, with the experience of the foreman who performed the majority of the project of the water and sanitary sewer relocations, he was very concerned about the height of the existing casing in reference to the height of the proposed casing. Now, this is one of those things, you don't know what's there until you open everything up. We did not have the opportunity to open up excavations and figure out exactly where everything is. During the design of the project, we were not in this area. We were not this close to the railroad during the water and sewer relocations. So we're coming into this, and this is a little bit more of sketchy is the word that comes to mind, but I'm not using it sketchy in a bad sense. I'm using it sketchy as literally a sketch drawing on a paper. We don't know what is there. we have an idea of what is there. We have old drawings, but the old drawings that were used in preparation of the water and sewer relocation plans told us that they were not entirely accurate. Things changed in the field. Those specific recording locations did not get accurately put down on paper for perpetuity. So we used the best information we had at the time, which unfortunately does not equate to what's in the field. So Dollinger's foreman was using that knowledge and using the design and does not think it's going to work. So where we're at tonight is Dollinger has proposed 2 options for this work. And as Jay has been investigating further, one of those options may be off the table already, but we won't really honestly will not know until we open it up in the field. So the 2 options that Dollinger had proposed was option number 1 was lowering the existing water line below the casing so we can fit a new casing in between. You have to have a certain amount of depth between the 2 casings for soil stability and to make sure that you have enough room to get that other casing in. They do not believe that there is enough room to get that second casing in as designed below the existing casing that is there with the existing pipe. So that was one option. The other option, which we favor, hopefully, is utilizing the existing casing. That depends on the casing stability. Is it in good condition? Is it possible to reuse it? Where is it located within that railroad right-of-way? The railroad requirements have changed. There are certain requirements as far as depth of utilities and lines underneath the railroad. Once again, those old drawings are not terribly accurate. We don't know exactly where that is, if it's even going to work. Jay has been doing some additional research and looking at those old drawings again, and it does not appear that that casing extends the entire width of the right-of-way, which we need. That's one of the newer requirements of the railroad. Not as in 2 years, but 5 or 10 years. This has probably been in for 20 plus. So all those things combined, this is why we don't have final numbers for you, but we do have situations to be brought before you. We had a meeting today, progress meeting, and KDOT agreed that with all of the unknowns in this situation, this would be a very good candidate for force account work. What force account with KDOT means is you keep track of every single piece of equipment, the hours that everybody on site, who they are, what they're doing. You keep track of all of the materials that go into the project, and it is paid literally on a time and material basis. So it's not an estimate up front, it is a time and material basis that are put into the performance of the actual work. So the third option that we discussed that's not included in here is just leave it alone. It is a thin-walled PVC pipe. It's an older technology, and the thin-walled PVC pipe is what we've been systematically trying to replace within the city. It is more apt to breakage. So that's another option that the city council can consider. I personally would like to see the pipe replaced with a standard, up-to-date PVC pipe, but that's council's decision. So I guess that's kind of in a nutshell my presentation. I'm here for questions. I know Councilmember David asked me quite a few questions, and I believe he had the answers that he needed. Jay is also here to answer questions and kind of help provide clarity if you guys have any questions.
Okay, so a couple just generic questions, kind of. This goes under the railroad, so is the railroad involved in any of this discussion?
The railroad they have approved permits for the pipes to go underneath. We have those, I think we had those back in October. But they have approved the means and methods, and that's all we need. Any changes that we have from here on out do not, as long as we're within the scope of those permits, we do not need additional authorization or
Because they
input.
had to approve the design.
Correct.
at one time.
They had to approve the design, and that's why I'm afraid that existing casing pipe under there, it'd be a great idea to reuse that. But until we find it and confirm, I have a hunch that it's too high for the railroad standards. And that's why I think that option's not valid. Again, I want to confirm where that is. So, and if it works out, we can reuse it. And we want to make sure that casing pipe is in good condition before we reuse it. But we do still have to follow those railroad parameters. Moving it deeper is within their parameters. Moving it to the side, which we'll have a limited because there's so many utilities crossing those railroads right in that spot. But again, those are things we're looking at as part of what Dollinger's proposing. One thing I want to add a couple things with what Dollinger was proposing and what basically we heard in our meeting today, that the option 2 on change order 2, he was saying, well, it's just basically adding some 45-degree bends. We have 45-degree bends that we installed as part of the water work we did, where the new water line connects to that existing water line. I'm thinking not on purpose. I'm thinking they're not accounting for those, and that may lower that value. And with that, I think what Dollinger's giving here is a worst case scenario, because I know they're calling these potential or proposed change orders, and they're not issuing these change orders because they know the work hasn't been done. So I'm thinking they're preparing us with this worst case scenario. I'm confident that we can better these, even if we went forward with those change orders. On that, with the change order 1, we added some valves on that 8-inch line on each side of the channel, on each side of the railroad with our project. And one thing I'm working with Ann, then this issue just between Ann and I came up to just this afternoon. I know Tim is saying there's 16 services. I think that number is less. If it's a lot, if I'm right, and I may not be, that's why we need to continue this conversation. If that's the case, the need for this change order 1 goes away. Or it's not worth it based off of, instead of 16 services, it's 4 or 5. Again, this is pretty fresh, and we're working through that. And so that was just kind of my this is a worst case scenario based off of just facts we don't have yet. So
Where are these 16 customers located?
well, I believe they would all be there. Well, the vet clinic on the north side is one of them. That's one we may be able to move a service line there and get them in between or outside of those isolation valves but that's not anything that Dollinger is proposing. I don't know where the 16 are or where the others are on the south.
They would be located directly north and south of that railroad crossing. So they're just right in that vicinity. Tim did not, and our conversations, Tim did not give me specific addresses of those 16 services.
I've got, and I want to explain to you too, I got a hunch that Tim was not accounting for the new valves we already put in. But we've got to run that.
Is any of this on the critical path?
It will be as we're moving forward,
Well,
but it is not at
it
this time.
either is or isn't when you do critical path analysis. Yeah.
It is not at this time because they're not at that location
Not
yet,
at that level,
but
at that
when they get to
point
that
in the path,
location,
but-
it's gonna be quick.
Okay. They're not that point in the path, but it's just delays.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
So how long till they get to that point?
They were thinking probably 2 weeks to a month. They weren't 100% clear. They're obviously weather is playing a big issue right now. They're not able to work towards the completion of the project as they wish because it's just too cold to be pouring concrete.
And how long are you going to be gone?
I'm gonna be gone for a week.
Okay.
So not overly long, but I won't have any chance to prepare anything for you for the next council meeting, which is why I'm here, at least informing you of it and trying to get your comfort level as far as moving forward and what your desire is. Obviously, the desire would be to spend no money, but that's to be said. But given the issues and given, the situation, I do want to get your temperature and get your thoughts.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Smith.
So on the first change order in our packet, it sounds like a lot of that is really designed to, if if we have to move forward with that and if we need to install those 2 valves. The real purpose of that is isolation so that we avoid some service disruption. If that comes before us to approve, I think it would be really helpful to understand how long is the service going to be disrupted to install the new valves, and having Dollinger include that as part of their change order, their commitment on what that looks like would be good. And then understanding what the service outage looks like without that change order, so that we can understand the difference between with the valves and without the valves, and can make a good decision.
And that was one of the things I wanted to add too. The way I understand it, when they cut in these valves on an existing line, there may be no disruption, or if it's very, very short. But we need to understand that more based on that price, because if it's an hour or hours versus days, that may affect, is it worth the cost or not?
Now, I want to go way back. Were we originally planning on replacing this water line, moving it?
Yes.
You're talking about the existing pipe and reusing the pipe's not the right thing, but the casing or something is what you called it. Were we planning on reusing that? Or were we planning on totally boring a new hole?
We were planning on boring a completely new hole and a completely new pipe underneath.
And was that to move it out of the Woodlawn path, or
I'm sorry?
was that to move it out from underneath where Woodlawn's going to go, or what was the reasoning for that?
The reasoning was because of the age of the pipe as well as the type of the pipe. It's this thin-walled PVC that is very prone to leakage.
Okay, so, and we're restricted to where we can put that in based on our agreement with the railroad?
We're restricted based off of just the fact that there's other utilities adjacent to this.
Okay,
This water line work was not relocated to get out of the way for anything for the Woodlawn project. It's just a very old pipe, and here we are at this point. It's a good time to replace it.
so if we have valves on either side, can we fill the existing casing with something to make it strong enough that then we could bore right beside it and not worry about having to go too far?
It's already filled with sand. It's filled within the interstitial space between the casing pipe and the water line pipe is already filled with sand.
Yeah, but could we go ahead and fill the water line pipe too if we've got valves on either side, so that we can make that a solid place under the railroad before we start our new bore wherever, so we don't have to be more than an inch or two from it because it's solid space?
I know what you're saying, and that actually is something we need to look into, because if we can, right now it's the contractor's responsibility to abandon that old pipe in there. Now, we're not going to remove that old casing, but if we can make it solid, I don't know how close, exactly with the new casing to the old, but the question is soil stability. But if that old casing pipe is solid and quote soil, how can we actually get closer to it? That I don't have the answer to right now, but that's a good point, and I think we need to talk to the contractor and get a good understanding for that.
Okay.
So you're telling, if I heard you right, you said the original proposal was that we were going to bore underneath this railroad with this new casing. So that's already in the contract price.
That is correct. They have shown that as the original bid item cost of $73,025. So that is figured into all of these change order pricing for proposed change order 2.
But if that was the proposal, that's already what the bid is. It's already in the contract. What are we considering different here from what is already in the contract?
The changes
the
that they
valves.
are requesting is the additional pipe and the fittings to lower. For option number 1, it would be the additional pipe and fittings to lower the water line to a point where they feel comfortable and they are capable of boring that line safely.
But that was already the proposal.
Okay, but to add, and I think Ann started to talk about this, we based those where the existing casing and water line is based off of city plans. Originally, we proposed to go out and what's called hydro excavate, where you actually physically dig a hole in the ground and tell where utilities are. That was one of the things at the very beginning that, look, in interest of cost, The city has that capability to do that. And so we took that out of our contract to hire another contractor to do it. Then COVID hit and the city didn't have the staff. We couldn't wait. So we went out and then just did the traditional probing of a line. Turns out, based off of plan records and our probing efforts, that we found the summer doing the water line work, water lines were in different spots. There was a loss of confidence of where that, okay, so where is this water line? That's what I think Don Dollinger's reacting to is, I'm not comfortable. We have enough space. And I think we need to, and if we go lower than planned, we get a little more assurance that and safety factor that we're staying away.
So right now, we don't even know if we need any of this.
That is correct.
And until we dig a hole, we won't know.
And once we dig a hole, we need to move forward pretty much immediately.
So it sounds to me like we need to find out where our existing valves are and who we're going to affect and how long we're going to affect them. And then if we do it in reverse order, if we've got the valves, we can fill that dead space before we drill the hole instead of drilling the hole and then filling it later.
Correct.
Mr. Mayor.
So that we could have a good structure.
Mr. Smith.
So it sounds like there's a little bit of a waiting game for the contractor to get to the point where they're digging holes in that area to get confidence in where those lines are at. Can we get that information sooner by having our team go do a more accurate locate in that space before we get to that point, so we have better information to get ahead of it?
Yeah, can somebody go ahead and dig the hole now?
I would prefer, and I don't know what if we got capability to do some hydro excavating now. I would just assume the contractor be involved, so the contractor has that confidence. Oh, here's where it is. Here's what we need to do, and then probably prompting them to revise this based off of new information.
It's even fine if the contractor goes and dig the hole, just so we know ahead of time what we're dealing with before we get to that point.
Yeah,
I don't want him to dig the hole and then say, I can't go any farther today because I don't know what to do. I'd rather have him dig the hole tomorrow, and 2 weeks from now, he knows exactly how to handle it.
My only concern with that approach is affecting their schedule. If they were planning on doing work in that area and we're going in and taking control over the site again, out of their line, out of their control, and taking control back and coming in and working in their work zone, I'm a little concerned about that conflict.
I'm saying let them do the work, not us.
Okay.
Let the contractor do it. There's no reason why I don't know of any reason why he couldn't go out there tomorrow and dig the hole, other than it's going to be cold.
Well, and whether tomorrow or the next day, but this is fresh. I mean, we had our first team meeting today to talk about this. So, I mean, I'm thinking the contractor and us working together, we're not playing a waiting game. And then, of course, and then bringing this to you in this form, I think is also, and showing that we're being proactive here.
Yeah, I think a failure mode to avoid is the contractor waits until this part of the project is critical path. They go and dig the hole, and then they say, hey, I can't go any further until we've made a decision. And then we have to go do all of this analysis to figure out what is the right path forward. And so if there's a way that we can get that information to do our analysis to determine the path forward before it's critical path for the contractor, that was really why I asked the question, is just looking for a way to do that.
Sure. And this is kind of also bringing you into the process a little bit. It's not just a one and done type of thing. It's a lot of back and forth, a lot of discussion, a lot of investigation between all the different groups. It's not just we find something and I can get it to you that afternoon. It takes usually a week to 2 weeks, depending on what's going on, to develop and flesh out everything that's occurring with circumstances. There's going to be some change orders that are a little bit easier, but on these kind of mysterious ones, so to speak, where there's a lot more work involved.
So I'm hearing on the issue of the valves, we need to learn a little more about who the customers are that'll be affected and for how long.
Sure.
Right? And on the issue of the casing and the pipe, that we need to get in there and find out where is that current casing and what is the effect, and come up with a discussion about that. It feels like, and I don't know that, I'm not saying, I'm not committing the council at all, but it feels like this is going to be a force account type of situation on time and material. Because I don't think we can wait for council to make a decision on all these details when you learn them. Maybe I can be surprised, but that's just what I feel. Okay.
Well, would we be, if they went out this week, would we be able to decide something next Tuesday since we're having a meeting anyway?
It's potentially, but probably not. That your regular council meeting in 2 weeks would be a better guesstimate of when you could have something available. I think the workshop next Tuesday is a little too quick because they have to, and I'm not even sure if Jay's correct and that casing does not extend to the right of way, we're not going to find it anyway because we don't have authorization to dig on the railroad right of way.
We can probe too. I mean, so.
But that's not digging, it's probing. I mean,
You got to be
digging
able
and
to,
opening it up the
you
next
got to be
morning,
able to
so-
find the water pipe on both sides, and the casing's
We
inside
can-
of that, so it's
Right.
somewhere
And we
at
know
this
exactly
height.
where that water line is on each side because we connected into it just several feet outside of the right of way. But when that line, I don't even know how old that line is. I can't remember. But when it was put in, there was not a permitting process for the railroad. It was probably go to the UP office up here on 21st Street or north of 21st Street and say, hey, we want to put a casing under here. Oh, just go from ditch to ditch. And the information on that line is very sketchy, very limited. And in fact, where I got the hunch that casing doesn't go from right of way to right of way was on the 18-inch water line that was installed under the railroad back in like 1990. The big 18-inch.
Okay, so we still need a full casing,
Yes.
but we know what height the existing water line is at, so we know it may not be a long enough casing, but we know where the casing is in elevation.
And I wouldn't be 100% confident in that either. I have experienced on another project where we potholed, it was actually an oil line, 3 locations along crossing a street. So we thought we were pretty comfortable, but when they went out to construct it, that oil line did funny things in between the potholes. And so we ended up changing the project. So we can certainly have the contractor go and open this up and see and do our due diligence and do the best information collection that we can. It's still not 100% until we're ready to move forward. So
Okay, so let me ask you then, if we do force work, exactly what does that mean? That means that we get the hole open, we know exactly what we're going to do, and we put them on time and materials to come up with the exact right solution, or do we still need to bring it back to council to agree that it's going to be forced work or that we're going to just pay some fixed cost?
that, I believe what would happen Jay has more experience, but I believe we would have an estimate going forward of the approximate, approximately what it will cost. And then that is what you would base your approval off of. The final cost would be paid for based on the force, on the record keeping, the time and the materials and everything that goes into that.
I think, the force account is based off of an estimate of time and materials, which that we, at this point, we haven't seen, but Dollinger's probably as part of preparing this has done some of that. I mean, that's how when they do their bid, they're looking at equipment, man hours and such.
So
Well,
most
Mr.
of the
Mayor.
time when we see these kind of deals, we put a price in not to exceed and say, then you can go forward with the project, but we're not there yet. So you make a decision. Mr. Smith.
Yeah, so I think we've gathered probably all the information we can on these 2 items tonight and can't really take any action. So I'm going to make a motion to table item C and D on tonight's agenda.
So
we need to-
parliamentarian question, can we combine those into one motion or do we have to make them separate motions?
Why don't we just make them separate and get on with it?
I'll make a motion to table item C.
I will second that.
Okay. To answer your question, because there's no uncoupling, I mean, the uncoupling would happen when you would take them both off the table, and if that would happen together, then there's no problem with putting them together now. They're just locked together
Okay.
if you were to do it that
I have a
way.
motion by Mr. Smith on items B and C to table, and a motion and a second by Mr. Welch.
I seconded, we were only doing item C so we could get on with the show, because we may not want to bring them both off the table at the same time.
So you're,
So my motion is to table item C.
okay. All right, very good. I see what's wrong here. All right, thank you. Motion by Mr. Smith and a second by Mr. Welch to table item C. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Here are 4 ayes. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
I'm going to make a motion to table item D.
I'll second that.
Motion by Mr. Smith and a second by Mr. Welch to table item D. Any additional discussion on item D? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. Just as I want to tell you, I thank you for bringing this before us, because these things, I get very concerned about us getting into critical path issues, and that's the reason I brought up this critical path policy we're going to talk about next. One thing that was mentioned that I am concerned about, and I hope that you're actively working this, when you see that you have to change drawings because of the conditions, let's make those changes so that the record going forward is reasonably accurate. I've heard of other situations where that wasn't done, and it's created a lot of problems. And as you're already experiencing here, right? So let's do what we can do to help not have that problem. All right, thank you. Moving on to item E, considering a Woodlawn critical path policy. So as we've seen tonight, change orders will be requested during the reconstruction of Woodlawn. We also know traffic will be limited for several months during the street work. In order to keep the project on schedule with few delays, I'm requesting council consider this policy that will allow staff to address smaller items under $10,000 while also committing council to be available for special meetings within 48 hours for larger change orders. Staff has created a draft, and I am interested in council's input. So just a reminder, last month we had a change order that affected the critical path of the project. As such, it extended the project 15 days or a half month. If we get very many more change orders that affect critical path of a project, we could see this project extended by 6 months or more. And if we're more diligent in addressing critical path issues, we can help minimize the impact of overall project completion. So that's part of my statement of appreciation for item C and D being brought up already, even though we weren't ready to make a decision about it. But at least we're getting ahead of the game, and there are going to be other issues. We know that. So with this policy, it helps move us along where we can get these addressed more quickly, not wait time. I don't know how much time we could have saved if we had this policy in place before, but maybe a week off of that, 15 days. I don't know. I can only guess here. Any discussion about the critical path policy?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Welch.
do we have the approval of both the city engineer and the city manager on this policy?
Yeah, we're comfortable with it. I mean, we typically have to make, decisions day to day. And so we would be comfortable making these. And of course, the larger ones are still going to come to you.
Then I have no objection. I'd rather be called on the phone and make a decision than have the road work held up.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
I also think this looks good. I'm going to make a motion to accept the Woodlawn critical path policy as presented.
Motion by Mr. Smith to
I'll
accept,
second.
and second by Mr. Welch. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 I hear 4 ayes. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. All right, move on to item 8, executive session. And staff is requesting a 45-minute executive session. But I am going to request before we do that we have a 5-minute recess.
We're going to have hold that in this chamber, right? Since we've got 2 people.
Yes, we'll ask the audience to leave.
Okay, just wanted to make that clear.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
I'll make a motion for a 5-minute recess.
I'll second that.
Motion by Mr. Smith and a second by Mr. Welch for 5-minute recess. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0 and recess for 5 minutes. Thank you. action on the agenda for executive session. The staff is requesting 45-minute executive session.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to go into executive session for the sole purpose of discussing the subject of attorney-client consultation regarding contractual obligations pursuant to the KSA 754319 exception for attorney-client privilege. Invite the city manager, the city attorney, and Jennifer Hill. The meeting will be for a period of 45 minutes, and the open meeting will resume in city council chambers at 9:10 p.m.
Oh, that's not 45 minutes. 10:21,
10.
10:10.
10:10.
Good enough.
We have a motion for executive session. Second.
All second.
Motion by Smith, and second by Mr. Welch. All in favor, say aye.
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 So 3 ayes. Mr. David, are you there?
Yes, I.
I got my mic was off. I'm sorry. Mr. David. How do you vote, Mr. David?
Aye.
Very good. All right. Thank
And
you.
did Joel vote?
You did.
Yes, he
Okay.
did. I heard.
4-0.
Yeah, motion carries 4-0 in
Good.
executive session for 45 minutes. Okay, call the meeting back to order. We held an executive session. No binding action was made. We're ready to move on to item 14, discussion and future issues. So our regular scheduled workshop is January 11th at 6:30. I was informed by Justin Smith that he is not available on the 11th. And looking at other opportunities, it appears the best alternative is January 19th at 7 p.m. That's the Monday or the Wednesday after our next city council meeting. So would that work for everybody?
Mr. Mayor, I got the general idea. We're talking about the scheduling of the workshop, but I can't hear.
Okay.
What you say.
I'll
So-
repeat it.
Okay,
So I'm not available to attend on the 11th, and so the mayor was looking for another date that might work for everyone. He proposed to the 19th.
Why don't we move it to the 25th?
had looked out.
Is
there.
there something,
I cannot do the 19th.
well, that scratches that one.
You could move, I'm on vacation the 20th through the 27th.
Okay.
You can have without me, that's fine. If you want me there.
Guess it depends on what we're talking about.
Well,
If you're
we're,
gone, we can
here's
talk
the
about it.
ideas that we're talking about is looking at the 2022 Bel Air legislative platform, the 2022 senior funding, and the 2022 curbside cleanups. And anything else we might need to add?
So the cleanup and the senior
You want?
Okay.
I'm sorry?
funding, the senior funding policy and the curbside cleanup.
I kind of thought.
You said you were leaving on the 20th?
Oh, sorry. I forgot we were back in session. Yeah, I'll be out of town the 20th through the 27th. So the legislative policy, I would need to be part of that. But if you wanted to talk about in January, the senior funding policy and the curbside cleanup, I have some input on those. But those could be moved to February.
Well, the legislative agenda is always interesting. Sometimes it takes a while to get there, but I haven't even reviewed the LKM proposals.
Are you going to be available any other day of the week? Yeah.
Yes, just not the 10th and the 11th.
Does the 12th work? I can't do the 13th.
12th, I
It's a Wednesday.
think does work if
This works for me.
needs to be. A little bit tight.
Joel, Greg, does the 12th work for you?
No.
He didn't like Wednesdays.
Wednesdays are bad for you, Joel.
Yes.
Well, I have the 13th as only a possibility for me because currently I'm scheduled to be in Olathe the 14th. And I need to travel that afternoon or evening. But looks like that's going to move. So it might be available. But it's kind of
13th.
tentative like that. I don't
It's
know.
not available for me.
Okay, it's not available for you.
Planning Commission.
That's right. You got a planning commission at that time too. So, okay. Yeah. You got the other meeting too. Yeah, that's
Yep.
right. Yep. All right.
17th? I don't know. It sounded like we can't agree on a date. Maybe we should scratch it. Is there anything that important that we can't wait?
Or, I mean, you guys can also meet on the regularly scheduled date, and I just won't attend.
It's
The,
not recorded though, so you won't be able to see it, right?
the legislative platform is probably the
Oh.
really pressing issue because legislature is going in session like next week. So if we want to have any input, we need to get it done. And probably waiting later is not as good.
Guess it's back to you.
Are you going to be available? You can do remote, or are you going to be?
No,
you
I
won't even
can't.
do remote?
I'll be in the air at that time.
In the air.
so.
Yeah. Okay. You can remote from the air, but it's a
Not
challenge.
reliably.
It's a challenge.
The other people around you won't appreciate it.
Right. Okay. So let's make it the 11th, and Mr. Smith won't be able to join us because it sounds like they're not going to get anything
Does it
else. in.
change the time,
Legislative
does it
agenda
help?
is the issue.
Nope. Okay.
Okay. If we have time, we can talk about senior funding and curbside cleanups. If we don't have time, we can put those into February. All right.
Did we decide on a date?
Yep, we're going to keep it on the 11th
Okay, thanks a lot, thank you.
at 6:30. Does that work for everybody? Okay.
That's good.
All right. Sorry, tried to accommodate it, but didn't work out. So, okay. Item 15, adjournment.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Smith and second by Mr. Welch. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. We are adjourned.
You didn't allow any discussion.
You want to discuss adjournment?
Well, I just thought it was funny that Mr.